It's a transfer of undertakings, protection of employment regulations. Derives from a European directive. It's been around since about 1982 in UK law, changed in 2006. And broadly, the idea is that where employees change employer, they keep with them the benefit of their old terms and conditions. There was a case involving a merger of an airline, Dan Air, with British Airways in the 1980s. And some point in about the year 2008, 2009, a High Court judge decided that in fact that had been a TUPE transfer, which created a potential legal minefield for British Airways because they had some employees still there who had actually transferred without anyone realising it under TUPE, and they could, if they'd had say an argument over their overtime rates for those decades, have potentially brought a claim for any backlogs of pay or something like that. So, but it's something that is designed to protect employee rights and it sometimes has some unusual consequences in that people can be left in a situation where an employer wanting to change terms for perfectly good business reasons may find themselves getting bogged down in arguments over whether or not the reason for the change is connected with the transfer, i.e. the change of business. So, for example, if you bid for a contract and set your prices low, you can't then say, when you take over the employees under TUPE transfer, well, I'm not making any money on this contract because I've put in a low bid and therefore I've got to reduce your rate of pay. What TUPE would say is you've got to keep that rate of pay, and if you've made a bad decision on the bid or perhaps a too low offer, that's your hard luck. And so that it can cause problems, but there can also be situations where employees have the benefits of particular things like life insurance or death in service benefits, where the costs of those have to be met by the employer, who may not have the benefit of the scale if they've transferred out of a large organisation into a smaller one. And so it can impose significant costs on employers, but overall in the scheme of things it's seen as a way to protect employee rights, and provided you know it's there and can work with it rather than around it, it's something that you should be able to manage with a bit of planning and cautious business practice. Well, the fact is that the protection that you get from a TUPE transfer is very strict, and if there's any reason connected with the transfer, you can't harmonise terms unless you've got a reason for making changes in the workforce. The basic problem employers face is that at any point after a transfer, the incoming employees who you've transferred into your business are entitled to retain the benefit of their old terms and conditions. And that means that you can have two workforces or more running with parallel terms and conditions of employment. And unless you have a particular legally defined economic, technical or organisational reason, you can't actually change terms. And generally harmonising terms is something that's not allowed, and even if it's to the employee's benefit, they could still argue that the change in terms is void if it's for a reason connected with the transfer. There is an exception where if there's a gap of a year between the transfer and the change in terms, and you're changing terms that have transferred in a collective agreement, you can actually agree to changes in terms and conditions, but that's quite a narrow and specific situation. And always with TUPE, what I say is, if you're not upset by it, you probably haven't understood it. And it's a very tricky area, but what I would say is that over time, there may be a situation where the reason for harmonising terms is nothing to do with the transfer, and then it's just like any other business change of terms and conditions. And another important exception is that if employees are under 2 years service before the transfer date, you can change their terms and conditions because they don't have the legal protection against their terms and conditions being changed after a TUPE transfer.